guys, welcome back to another cult movie review. I hope everyone is doing well. Today I've got a unique review I'm bringing to you. Today I'm going to look at the NBC television pilot Crime Story from 1986, which was directed by the great Abel Ferrara. Now, when it comes to reviews, as you know, I tend to focus on film releases rather than television shows. With that said, I'm a big fan of Abel Ferrara. As you know, I've done several reviews of his films, and this specific entry in his filmography doesn't really get talked about. And in fact, the whole Crime Story series is unfortunately pretty forgotten these days. And so by me doing this review, it's to showcase and shine a spotlight on this great piece of 80s television. And for Abel Ferrara fans, this is a must watch. Now, Crime Story, if you didn't know, ran for 2 seasons on NBC network television from September 1986 to May 1988. A total of 44 episodes were produced overall, with a host of notable actors and directors involved. So this was of course broadcast on American television, NBC network. Here in the UK, a series of VHS tapes were released containing a number of episodes from the first season. Now, first and foremost, I want to mention that this show was only created due to the huge success of the NBC cop show Miami Vice. That show, which ran from September 1984 to May of 1989, became a massive television success, drawing in millions of viewers. So after the second season of Miami Vice in 1986, the Miami Vice executive producer and showrunner Michael Mann was given basically free rein by NBC to come up with a new television show for the network. You know, at the time, NBC were very happy with the ratings for Miami Vice, huge success, and basically gave Michael Mann free rein to do whatever he wanted to do. And so Michael Mann got involved with writer Gustav Reininger and former Chicago cop Chuck Adamson to write the pilot script. Abel Ferrara, who had previously directed 2 episodes of Miami Vice, was tasked to produce the debut episode for the show. At this point in his career, Abel had already proved he was a capable director, not just on the big screen with films like Miss 45 or Fierce City, but also on the small screen with his episodes of Miami Vice. You know, when you think about it, directing is not an easy task, especially when you're directing a television pilot. There was a lot of pressure on Abel Ferrara to deliver the right tone and direction for the rest of the series to follow. Michael Mann, of course, trusted Abel Ferrara. He had seen his work on Miami Vice. I mean, he was so good he was rehired to do a second episode. And he trusted Abel to pull it off, and he didn't disappoint. So let's get into this pilot for 90 minutes, episode 1. So beginning in Chicago, 1963, the story follows Lieutenant Mike Torello, played by actor Dennis Farina, and his team of detectives trying to enforce the law on the streets of Chicago. Now, Dennis Farina is a great actor, miss him dearly, passed away several years ago. He himself was a real-life Chicago police officer years before turning to acting. While he was working with Michael Mann on the 1981 movie Thief, Farina and Mann bonded and basically became friends. Farina would then go on to star in 2 episodes of Miami Vice, playing the notorious gangster Lombard, before then starring in Michael Mann's next feature film, Manhunter, from 1986. Another amazing film that I must get around to reviewing at some point. Farina had this amazing screen presence, and he was very natural on screen. He brought this earnest sensibility to his character, whether that be good or bad. For this project, Crime Story, specifically Farina was positioned to be the main focal point for Michael Mann's new show. By 1986, Farina had already had experience in film and TV. But to be honest, carrying a primetime network television show was still a big challenge, so props to Farina for stepping up to the plate. The start of the pilot sees Torello and his partner, Danny Krycek, played by actor Beau, responding to an armed robbery that's taking place. We see this masked gang ransack a high-end restaurant in downtown Chicago. The men start taking the guests' money and jewelry. People are screaming, but they fail to escape once Torello and his men show up. And as this is all happening, we hear the Crime Story title theme, Runaway, by Del Shannon, playing in the background. Seeing the visuals and the music, it really worked perfectly. So the cops surround the restaurant and exchange words with the gang inside. This all leads to an impressive car chase sequence involving several classic cars. You have the criminals driving erratically down the interstate with Torello and the cops giving chase. It's an intense scene, and one of the masked men starts shooting at the police while the gang's hostages look petrified in the back seat. It's crazy. And at one point, the gang even force one of the hostages to lean out the back window while the car's, driving through traffic. This was a great car chase and a great way to, set up your show. And, this sequence, like the rest of the pilot, was very well made, and it looked like a scene out of a movie rather than an 80s television show. You've got the long tracking shots of the classic 60s cars riding down the highway. It's some great visuals. It's clear to see that a lot of time and energy had gone into this TV production. The main storyline of the pilot sees character Johnny O'Donnell, played by actor David Caruso, immerse himself into the Chicago underworld. O'Donnell is this ambitious guy, but he gets involved with all the wrong people, including the local gangster Ray Luca, played by actor Anthony Dennison. So O'Donnell comes to him with a plan to steal diamonds from the Chicago National Bank. He, Ray Luca, and his team successfully pull off this heist and begin selling the stolen goods for money. Lieutenant Torello gets news of the robbery and, of course, begins to investigate. What makes things interesting is that Torello is close friends with Johnny O'Donnell and his family. Later, we see Johnny and Ray Luca take the stolen goods to this big-time gangster called Phil Bartoli, played by actor John Polito. Bartoli is interested in taking the stolen merch, but basically stiffs them on the price. O'Donnell reacts badly to Bartoli's offer and basically leaves with the goods. Ray Luca then steps in and convinces his friend O'Donnell to take Bartoli's deal and, build a working relationship with him. Now, I just want to say this was a great scene with some amazing, wonderful style and acting going on here. Specifically the location they used for Phil Bartoli's house, that was amazing, and it had this really cool, unique look. And when it came to the acting, I thought the back and forth dialogue between all three characters really worked well. The O'Donnell character is an ambitious hothead who wanted to climb the ladder and be top dog of Chicago. And this aggressive exchange he has with Gangster Phil Bartoli leads O'Donnell to take drastic actions against him and raid one of Bartoli's jewelry stores. O'Donnell's robbery of Bartoli's jewelry store doesn't go down well. Bartoli wants blood and O'Donnell is a wanted man. But this is where Ray Luca started to make his own strategic moves and aligned himself with Bartoli. Luca was very smart and conniving. He too wanted to climb the ranks of the criminal underworld just like O'Donnell. So the two liaise and Bartoli gives Luca the orders to murder O'Donnell and the crew that took down the jewelry store as a way to prove his loyalty to Bartoli. O'Donnell is subsequently shot by Luca and a business relationship emerges between the two. Lieutenant Torello, who of course was investigating the spate of robberies, gets a deathbed confession from O'Donnell at the hospital. The dying Johnny O'Donnell, with his final breaths, tells Torello it was Ray Luca who shot him before passing away. It was quite a tragic scene, seeing O'Donnell there. He'd been shot in the head by Luca. He's struggling for breath. You've got a very angry Torello saying, "Who did it? Who did it, huh?" Caruso's like, Luca, Mike, Luca. So that's, great acting from David Caruso. So the death of Johnny O'Donnell would set up the Ray Luca and Lieutenant Torello feud that would continue on over the course of the series. With the assistance of Phil Bartoli, Ray Luca was on the rise and Torello wanted to stop him at any cost. Now I want to mention David Caruso here for a moment and just talk about his performance. Overall, I loved it and I thought he did an excellent job playing this cocky Irish gangster wannabe tough guy. There's a certain energy that Caruso gives to this performance in Crime Story. The character is eager for success and happy to take all the shortcuts to get there. What I found interesting was that the O'Donnell character seemed to come from a normal, loving family, yet he still pursues a life of crime. Usually we see these up-and-coming gangster types in these films where they've come from bad backgrounds, they're poverty-stricken and they're looking for a way out. But we see O'Donnell's parents, they own a shop, they seem very well respected, they're of course friends with the lieutenant. So it was kind of interesting to see this young guy take all these shortcuts in life. Me personally, I would have loved to have seen more from the Johnny O'Donnell character backstory, to gain a better understanding of how this character came to be. Sadly, due to the time constraints of the episode, a lot of the backstory context was lost. Now, David Caruso only signed up for the original pilot episode of Crime Story. The actor, who had already made several film appearances, was clearly aiming for a long-term movie career and didn't want to be tied down to a TV show. This, of course, is ironic now, given Caruso's later success on television. Still, it was a shame that Johnny O'Donnell didn't stick around for too long in Crime Story. I personally thought there was a lot of potential with that character. Another aspect of the Crime Story pilot that I really enjoyed was the fact that the pilot gave time to establish the relationship between Torello and his wife Julie, played by the late Darlene Flugel. She's this doting wife trying to understand and be there for her husband, yet Torello's job troubles become an obstacle for them. We see the impact of the job take its toll on their relationship, which definitely added a sense of realism to the whole story. Both Dennis Farina and Diane Flugel had great screen chemistry together. They both came across as this respectable older couple who loved each other very much and just wanted to make their marriage work. And I must say, it is a little bit sad to watch these episodes now knowing that both actors died so young. This was an amazing pilot and setup for the Crime Story series. For me, a guy who's seen both seasons of the show, I would actually say the pilot is one of the strongest episodes in the entire series. The pilot features an array of great character actors, and nearly everyone nailed their performance. The costumes, the set designs, the classic cars that were used, as I mentioned, clearly a lot of time and effort was spent trying to execute the right tone for this show. It's a brilliant piece of television, even by today's standards. And so, dislikes for the 1986 NBC pilot Crime Story. My main dislike would have to be the Martin Ferrero character Ignacio, who shows up at the police headquarters at the start of the show. Now, I've not mentioned this character up until now because he's pretty insignificant throughout the whole of the episode. With that said, I'm not a fan of this character. Now, the reason for this was due to the fact that the Ignacio character that we saw was very similar to Martin Ferro's character Izzy Moreno on Miami Vice. Now, if you're not aware of the show Miami Vice, the character Izzy Moreno throughout the 5 seasons of the show played the comic relief. For me, it was like Izzy Moreno from Miami Vice showing up in Crime Story. It just didn't make sense to me. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why this actor was cast in Crime Story to begin with. For me, it just wasn't necessary and pretty much a complete waste anyways. Crime Story had a fairly gritty vibe, and incorporating a comedic character just wasn't needed, especially for the pilot show. And when I think back to this actor, it may have been better if he'd just been cast as one of the henchmen that got killed. And so, ratings for Crime Story 1986, the pilot episode. For this, I'm going to be rating it a strong 8.5 out of 10. This is one of the best television pilots that I've ever seen. If you're a fan of the crime genre, if you're a fan of Michael Mann, if you're a fan of Abel Ferrara, then this is a must-watch for you. It's great performances, great action, great dialogue, and a great attention to detail. I loved it. And when it comes to Abel Ferrara's television output, I would say the Crime Story pilot was his best television work he ever produced. 90 minutes of great crime drama, and it's just a shame that Abel never came back to direct another episode of Crime Story. Now, the series has been released on DVD, and I believe some episodes are also available on YouTube. If you get a chance, give it a go. It's worth your time. And that's me for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the review. Don't forget to subscribe. It does mean a great deal. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Like, subscribe.